RM Sotheby's is the world's largest collector car auction house by total sales. They are the preeminent market maker of high-quality collector cars and collections, regardless of size or complexity. By working in partnership with the Sotheby's team and its network of 80 offices in 40 countries, RM Sotheby's has established the largest client network of any collector car auction house in the world. Join the RM Sotheby's family by connecting with one of their car specialists at rmsotheby's.com or contact me directly at gstanley@rmsotheby's.com. LLC TLC is here to save you money on all of your vehicle purchases. LLC TLC will permanently register your classic cars in Montana to avoid any annual renewal fees. As your registered agent, they will handle everything for you so you never have to step foot in Montana. And as a listener of this podcast, LLC TLC is offering 30% off your entire package. Simply go to llctlc.com/classic or mention this podcast when you contact LLC TLC directly. All right, welcome to the Collector Car Podcast. I have a returning guest on today's show, Tim McNair. Tim, how you doing, buddy?
Good. What's going on, Greg?
Keeping super busy, as I know you are. Your place looks really cool. You got a lot of cool stuff in the background there. Is that your man cave?
No, sort of. It's just a bunch of crap that's laying around right now. I should have probably cleaned up a little bit. What you can't see in the picture is about 3 or 4 display cases of stuff that I've collected through the years, and a slot car track, which is on the other side of me.
So, oh, nice. I do see your Mickey Mouse cup, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, that's just, mandatory. Got to have that.
Yeah. And your wine cooler. Very nice. Very nice. Okay.
Yeah, the obligatory. That came from a friend of mine gave me that. It's actually a Starbucks cooler they had in his cafeteria that they were throwing away. Became my wine cellar. So it worked out well.
Did you make it Gulf oil colors, or was it already like that?
Oh, it's always that color. It's got Starbucks logo on the front.
Wow. All right. Gulf oil Starbucks wine cooler. That's limited edition, I'd say.
Everyone's got one, I thought. I was surprised you don't have one yet.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Today's going to be fun because we were having a conversation, and, the conversation was kind of like most valuable cars in the world. And what I thought was interesting is you, in your opinion, and I would have to agree with you on the majority of your list here, is you not only know, like, all right, the Ferrari GTO is one of the most expensive cars in the world, but like the exact Ferrari GTO that is the most expensive of the Ferrari GTOs. But beyond that, you're also, it's this car of this model that won Le Mans with this driver, that's the most expensive car. So I thought that would be very fascinating to go through your list. And obviously listeners, if they want, they want to chime in, just chime in the comment section. So what I thought we'd do is go through our top 10 from number 10 to number 1. And then after that, we'll do some honorable mentions. But before we do all that, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
I am Tim McNair. I run a company called Grand Prix Concours Preparation. I travel all over the world to work on cars, get them ready for events like Pebble Beach and Amelia Island, that sort of thing. I also do a lot of cars for auction companies. I'm sure you're familiar with those. But lately, I've been doing a lot more preservation cars that have been found in barns and things like that, and trying to keep them as original as possible. But it's been a good gig. I've had it for been doing this particular job for about 18 years. My background is in the restoration business mostly, and I've done virtually everything in the car business, from insurance to I'm a certified Mercedes mechanic. So anyway, it's been a fun run. I've worked on the greatest cars in the world, everything from an 1885 Duryea to McLaren Speedtail. So, and virtually everything in between. So
if there's a particular car on our list that you have worked on, call it out. I know that these are a little different in that they're somewhat museum cars for some of them,
Yep.
So I know that's a little different. So
in fact, a lot of them are here in Philadelphia, which is kind of funny, at the Simeone collection. So
yeah.
When we get through the list, as we go through, you'll see. Now, I do want to say one thing about my list. This is a list that is sort of random more than anything, and it's what I believe are the most valuable cars. Now, of course, I'm not the guy writing the check for over 40 or 50, 60, 80 million. So, but I would think that this is a pretty solid list. And of course, there are changes, and there are probably other people have various opinions. But you want to start right away at number 10?
Yes, let's start with number 10, Porsche 91730 Sunoco.
So one of my all-time favorite cars, this car is actually in the southern part of the United States now, is completely restored at Bruce Canepa's place. But the real claim to fame, my personal thing, is that the car was a local car to here in Philadelphia. It was built at Penske's shop down in Newtown Square, PA, and painted in a shop called Mullen Auto Body in Wayne, PA, which a lot of my friends used to work at.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
yeah, so there's a nice tie in there. It is this specific car, by the way. There are other 91730s, the Cam 2 car, of course, which was transformed from this one, and also 91710s, and we'll get into other 917s. But when you think about Porsche, this is the one. We have another Porsche on the list that we'll get to later, but this one, 1100 horsepower and twin turbo V or flat 12 is about as exciting as it gets. And I would think if it were ever to come up for sale again, it would probably bring quite a bit of money. So,
What would you guess? I had heard rumors that it was purchased last for, I can't even remember now what it was. It was like, I don't know, 10 million, something like that. But then it went straight into restoration. Is that right?
yeah, and Canepa, somebody blew their brains out on the restoration and spent a hell of a lot of money. But with the Donahue tie-in, the championship, the fact that it is it is the one that's most recognizable in the 917 world, I would think. I don't know. Putting a value on it, most of the cars we're going to talk about in this top 10 list are over 20 million. So let's just use that as a benchmark.
Sure. Okay. All right. Number 9, the Ferrari TR61 Le Mans winner. All right. Tell me about this car. And if you know where it is, if it's in a public location, please let us know.
So this particular car, we've got quite a few Ferraris on this list in the top 10. I picked this one, but it could be interchanged with two other Le Mans winners. I picked this one because it was the first of it's not the first V12 winner, but it was the Phil Hill Gendarme Beyond car. So it's got a lot of history to it, a lot of American history to it, and it's stunningly beautiful. So I think that all that plays into it. It's a very special car.
Yeah, I'd say any Testarossa is gorgeous, right?
Yeah, this one in particular. Not a pontoon car, solid, slab sides, sort of, if you can call them that. But just the history behind it. The car is fantastic and beautifully done.
Is this privately owned at this time?
It is.
Okay.
West Coast car, I believe.
Okay. Next, the Ford GT 1075 6869 Le Mans winner. You'll see a theme here. A lot of these are the cars that won Le Mans.
Yeah, as we're coming into Le Mans weekend, which is interesting.
It is, yes.
But it's my personal opinion that is the benchmark. Cars of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the only way that you prove that you had the best car was to win Le Mans. So when you look at those cars, not only were they cars that won that particular race, but went on to win other races. This, I did not pick the 66 GT40, which would be the obvious choice, but the 68-69 winner, which is one car, 1075, Gulf colors, won both years back to back. No other car has done that.
Is that number 6 or number 7?
Number 6, then number 9.
Number 9, okay.
68 was 6, 69 was 9. It's car's phenomenal. I was at Laguna Seca one year, and that car was there. They were debuting the 4GT, the new style 4GT, and it was sitting in this little garage, and there was nobody around it. And there was a guy from Ford Performance sitting behind it. I walked in, I said, "This is 1075." He goes, "It is." I said, "Nobody gets it. This is the one. Like, this is
right."
Everybody thinks black number 2 or Ken Miles, a Gulf colored car, but this is the one. This was, I think, it's the best 4GT of all time. So there you go.
And this one's Gulf oil colors too, right?
It is all Gulf, both of them, both versions.
Yeah.
I mean, same chassis, but both cars were Gulf colors, with the horseshoes on the rear quarter panel, which was part of their thing. Anyway.
So if you had to put a ballpark on this, like, are we thinking, I mean, I know like the street 4GTs are, 4 to 7, and then you get the racing livery, you're talking 10 to 14, right? This would be maybe 25 million, something like that. I don't know.
Probably. I got to think, but being the only car that's done what it's done, and the fact that it is probably the best Ford GT. This would be king of the hill. And as far as Ford goes, this may be the best Ford racing car of all time, as
Right.
far as I can tell. I mean,
Yep.
there are other Ford powered cars, but a true Ford Gulf, this was a John Wyer car. It has
Yeah.
so much history. It's the one. It's
Yeah.
just that simple. And yeah, I would think over 25 easily. If I were, I would think that car has some serious value to it.
Right. Right. All right. Number 7, Aston Martin DBR1. This is not only a cool car, but a gorgeous car.
Yeah, so I'm specifically picking on the Carroll Shelby winner, 1959 Le Mans winner. Spectacular car, sister car to it, lives here in Philly. But there is only one. That's that one Le Mans, and that car is spectacular. I'm not an Aston Martin fan by any stretch of the imagination, but this car is very special. And as far as British history goes, I think it's got a little bit more clout than even things like the D-Jags. I think this really has a place in history, and maybe it is worth less than say the 91730 or even the 4GT. It definitely deserves a high place on our list. It's fantastic.
Now, the other one, is that at the Simeon Museum?
Yes,
How many did they make?
I believe three.
Okay. I believe 3 as well. Yeah. Okay. Number 6, Ferrari 250 GTO. Now, this is, you know, can be complex, but 36 original 250 GTOs. Is there a particular one or just in general?
I would not pick one particular car because, as you personally know, they're all over the map.
Yeah, they
And
are.
of those 36 cars and then the three Series 2 cars, uh, I think the value of that car will depend on a couple of things. One is the history of the car, the race history, the restoration of the car, because there is a car out there that is sort of gray area that doesn't have a lot of value in the overall spec of GTOs. But on the other hand, it could bring astronomical money based on the fact that maybe it had something special about it. But
Yeah.
it is the Holy Grail. It's the car that everyone recognizes. It's what people think a Ferrari is supposed to look like. And the styling, you could go back to the styling cues that are picked up by hundreds of cars from that point on, from 62 on. But every time I see one, it's stunningly beautiful. And surprisingly, never won Le Mans. Won a ton of races, but not that great. There were better Ferraris that won bigger races. But it's the
Yeah.
allure. It's the one.
Yeah. And it's those D scoops on the front. Yeah. And for our listeners, obviously, we've talked about a lot about the one that sold for 51.7 million, but they go up to, private sales reportedly over 80 million, correct?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So sure, and it could surpass that. The next one sold, just depending
Hmm.
on who and what and where.
Right.
Uh,
Yes. Last I heard, there were 3 or 4 for sale, and I haven't heard of any of them that sold recently. It's just
yeah,
interesting that, being so few, that there were so many for sale all of a sudden. So,
yeah. But well, you should get in line if you have one in mind, Greg. I mean, maybe we can, we could do like a fractional ownership. You know.
I've already got mine, Tim. It's on the shelf over there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, me too. I've got in several different scales from 64th up to about 12th, so I'm in good
Yeah.
shape.
Yeah. All right. The next one you picked, I think, is really interesting because it is at the Simeon Museum again. And I think
Yes.
it's one of the ugliest cars in the world, but it's also very successful. The Bugatti Tank. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so it's the 1937 Le Mans winner. Um, so uh, I know a little bit about these cars. I don't know a huge amount about these cars, but of all the Bugattis, this is the one. This is their holy grail. This is the one that they think is the most valuable. I would agree. It is goofy looking, but it's a very special car. And this particular one, which is at Simeon, is something to behold. It's not only the fact that it's a Bugatti, which is it's rarefied air. I mean that they're built specifically for a certain purpose, like in this case, to win Le Mans, and things like all the engine turning in the engine. These are works of art. You may not like the styling, but it's the overall effect.
Right.
These cars, this particular car is an amazing car.
Now, weren't there 2 of them and one was destroyed, or is it always just one?
Yeah, as far as I know, that's true that there were two and one was gone. But um, I remember when Bugatti introduced, they did a special edition of the Veyron, and they brought Simeon's car out to the Quail, and they brought it in for a special thing. And seeing that car amongst all the modern Bugattis, it was pretty amazing. It was pretty
Yeah, I
cool.
bet. I bet. All right, number 4. Like you said, these are not necessarily in valuation orders. If you had to put a number on the tank, what would you put on it?
Ooh, it's unknown. It's one of those cars, and
Yeah.
that's true for probably the next three cars. They
Hmm.
could go anywhere. They can go 30 million. They go 50 million. They go 10. Uh, I think it's going to be depend on who the next owner of that car will be and how much they're willing to part with. I mean, maybe, in the case of the Bugatti, it may go back to VAG. They bought a Bugatti Royale. So, I mean, Volkswagen Audi Group, they
Right.
may go back and buy something like this just to preserve it. I don't know. That's
You
which
know, it's
means
interesting. Yeah,
the
it's
number,
interesting to say that because the Bugatti Royale was forever like it was the first $10 million car at a
yeah,
public auction in the 80s, I think it was.
yeah,
But those be lucky to hit $10 million now, right? Is it
it's
just
true. Well, I
the
don't
way that?
know. One hasn't come up for sale in a long time. I
Yeah,
worked on the Napoleon Coupe, the one that Volkswagen owns, and there's not much like that. It's
yeah,
absolutely massive.
yeah.
And working on that engine is like a locomotive engine, and everything is just so disproportionate to what we're used to.
The only one I've
That's what
seen
makes
is
it exciting.
yeah, the only one I've seen is in the Ford Museum, and it was donated back like in 1958. Like it's been there
Yeah,
forever. So
exactly. And they've got quite a few cars between them and Indianapolis museums that that are on this list.
that's
It's
true.
a
And
big, pretty big
Simeon.
list. So it's kind of funny.
Well, speaking of Indianapolis Museum, next is the 1965 Le Mans winner, the 250 LM Ferrari, right?
Yep. So personally, I think this of all the Le Mans winners from Ferrari, I think this is their best. First of the mid-engine, and it's a 250 LM, and it's the only one like it. It has a long nose, which none of the others do. It's just a phenomenal car. Now the car's been hasn't been restored, but it's been sort of touched up and warmed over, and it's been uh, pushed around a few times to different events recently. So you've seen it at Pebble Beach, you've seen it at Amelia, and things like that. But the
Right.
car is stunning, and Jochen Rindt driving the car has a lot to do with it. But yeah, it's a great car, just beautiful. And I doubt if they'll ever sell it, but if they do, I'm sure the number will be staggering.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the next two, our number 2 and number 1, are pretty interesting because
Oh, you
neither
missed number
one.
three.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I did miss number 3. All right. Well, let me retract that setup I just
Yeah.
did. All right. Number 3, which you and I have seen this car in person, incredible car, 1971 Le Mans winner, the Porsche 917. Which is it on my poster? No,
Nope.
no. But there's a 917 back behind me. Yeah. Tell us about this car, Gulf Oil,
Well,
beautiful.
oh no, not the Golf car. The 71 winner is the Salzburg car, the
Oh,
red
that's right.
car.
Yeah, yeah.
So I chose this particular one because it was the one that won Le Mans, and it's an amazing car. And we had to put in another 917 on the list, a normally aspirated one. I think again, if this car were ever to come up for sale, it could be astronomical money because it's still owned by the factory, and I'm sure the factory will never part with it. But not the first winner. It's the second time they won with a 17. The first one was the Martini car, I think. Hold on.
Is
So
this the red?
023 is the car right there.
Okay, I was about to say, is it the red white one? Yep, yep. So are you
I'm
pulling
sorry. It
up?
won. It won in 1970. So it was the first. It was the first Le Mans winner in 19. It was the first Le Mans winner, 917 Le Mans winner.
All right,
So
I got to show you a children's toy. Now I've had this since I was like 4 years old.
91710.
Yeah,
Yep.
the LM Porsche Audi one.
Yep.
Yeah, so that didn't make our list, but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah. So I took the 91730, the later car, over that one, but that
Right.
was the first of the Can-Am 917 series with the turbos, the 91710. That was like George Fulmer and people like that drove that car. I picked a Donahue car for a lot of reasons, mostly sentimental, but I think it's a much cooler car and a next generation too.
Right.
Getting back to this 917, so it was the first overall win for Porsche. That was the first thing. 1970. It was the first 917 to win, which is pretty cool. So I think that's why of all the Porsches, and you can argue this to death, but of all the Porsches, this may be the most significant of them all.
Right. Yep. Okay. All right. Let me do my setup again. All right. So most of these other ones were Le Mans winners that we've talked about, which is still occurring today. Like you said, is coming up here soon. These top two, number one and number two, never ran at Le Mans, but they ran at Mille Miglia. Number two, Alfa Romeo 8C 2900, 1938 winner. Tell us about this beautiful car. And why are they still worth so much considering the race that they won is defunct? I mean, they do it as a rally, but it's no longer a race.
It is this particular car, probably the greatest of the pre-war cars. Very few pre-war cars on this list, and I'm sure you can add one or two. We have them later. Couple other ones like the Auto Union V16 and things like that we haven't talked about yet. But we're looking at most valuable. And this particular car has been touted before as being the most valuable car in the world. I would disagree because you'll hear our number one, and I think that is truly much more valuable. But anyway, this 8C, supercharged straight 8, it's just an amazing car. Read the history on the car. That's the best thing I can tell you. It's stunningly beautiful, but it was Alfa. Alfa back then was the standard by which all were judged, and their racing history is unparalleled in the 30s, and it's just the best of the Alfa Romeos, period.
Right. Yeah, stunningly beautiful car. Yeah, and there's one or two of those at Simeon, right?
This car is at Simeon. Yeah.
Red?
The winner is at Simeon.
Yeah, and it's red, right?
Yeah, and the sister car to it is in a collection in New York.
Okay.
But the other finisher. So, but this is the actual winner. That's at the Simeon collection, and is the pride of their collection. When you walk into their winner circle in the back, it's prominently displayed in the middle. But that could be it. That could be one of the most expensive cars ever sold, if it were ever to be sold.
Now, if you haven't been to the Simeon Museum, stay tuned because I'm going to do a walking, talking tour. And maybe, Tim, you can join me when I do this. You could be my narrator. I don't know.
Sure.
Coming up in a couple weeks. I don't have it scheduled yet, but I will let you know, okay?
Sounds great. I'm in.
All right, number one, Mercedes-Benz 300 SL 722. What year did that win?
Well, 1955.
Good.
The car is famous for a number of things, but it's the 300 SLR.
Yeah.
So straight 8, magnesium body, inboard drum brakes, like just ridiculous technology for its time. This particular car, though, number 722, is the Dennis Jenkinson Sterling Moss car that they drove 1,000 miles in just over 10 hours. Never to be broken, I'm sure. It's phenomenal. It's also the sister car to the one that crashed at Le Mans in 1955.
Killed what, 88 people?
Yeah, killed 83, 84 people, and set precedent at Le Mans because of things like the magnesium body, which when they tried to put out the fire, just intensified. So they had no idea what to do with that car. That's part of the problem why it was so destructive. But getting back, this car is epic. Engineering wise, it had so many innovations. There's so many different things. Desmodromic valves like a Ducati has these days, where mechanical actuation on the valve opening and closing. Straight 8, dry sump. But more than anything, this car it's legendary. I mean, imagine driving all day, 10 hours at averaging over 104 miles an hour, they say. That's right. Just an amazing thing. So, at peak speeds, it was probably doing 140,
Right.
And then at the same time, never really stopping. I mean, talking to Sterling, you've seen all the interviews, and him feeding him apples and things like that while he's driving and reading off his chart, which was on a scroll. This car has so many legendary stories that go with it. But the bottom line is, it is phenomenal. The height of engineering at its time, and will never be replicated. And I personally think it's one of the most beautiful cars. It
It
is
is. Yeah.
incredible looking. Um, but yeah, this would be it. I've heard, so everyone, I'm sure a lot of your viewers already know about the sale of the coupe that was built for Rudolf Luhnhout, the which was a deal that was worked out with, was it with Harlem? Who
Yeah.
did the, yeah, you
Yep.
guys put the deal together with Mercedes Benz. Technically, the car isn't really sold, is it leased? Nobody really knows how it's all working, but the bottom line number at that time was 154 million. That was what, a year and a half
142
ago?
million.
Okay, 142 million.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Pennies difference.
Yeah, so but 722 will eclipse that because basically the coupe was never raced, never really driven except by Leonardo as his commuter. But this car was the one. It's a record that will stand forever, and um, it's the best of the best. So
Yeah.
so if
Yeah.
that went
So,
for 152 million, one can only speculate what this could go for if it were ever sold, which
right.
it
Right.
never will be sold.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. All right. I was going to ask you about the Uhlenhaut Coupe, so I'm glad you brought it up. Okay. So we do want to have a couple honorable mentions here. You gave me kind of a list, the next group. So the first one I thought was pretty interesting. The Bugatti, is it Atlantique or is it Atlantic?
And I think so there were three of them. One was made up from the parts that were a car that was hit by a train,
Well, there's
but
four
probably
total, but one's missing. La Voiture Noire is missing, correct? The black one, which had a supercharger.
so they say. But
Last seen in 1938, being squirreled away on a train in Bordeaux to escape the Nazis.
yeah,
Can't get better than that, right?
exactly. But I would say of all of them, probably the one is the one that's in the Ralph Lauren collection everybody's familiar with. It was done at Paul Russell, the black one. That car is spectacular. And it is one of the few road cars on the list.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other cars on that list is another Ralph Lauren car, the Mercedes-Benz Trosi Roadster, which is just a one-off special 500K that was just is amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Again, one of those cars that is one-off special as it gets, based on one of the greatest pre-war cars of all time.
Yeah,
Uh,
those were incredibly special when built. I mean, they went to captains of industry, right? And were one
oh my,
off and
yeah,
special favors to the builder. It's just nuts. Okay.
it is. Yeah, they're just otherworldly, and build quality on those cars was far beyond anything of its time. I've never seen anything quite like it. I've done a couple of 500s and 540s, and the undercarriage is what you need to look at, and the engine.
Mm.
They're just amazing superchargers, and they're just so cool and built to a much higher level than everyone else.
Right.
Um, there are two more Ferrari Le Mans winners on here, again, just to throw into the mix. The 275P, which is one of my favorite cars. It's an open car, mid-engine, sort of it was the 63 car, so it was the before the 65 winner. Um, but beautiful car, just stunningly beautiful. If someone were, again, if that car were to come up for sale, it could be huge money. The other one is just one of my favorite cars in general, which is the 166. That's in the collection in Reno. Most people are familiar with it. 1949 winner, first Ferrari win, and in an early as it gets Ferrari, the Barchetta. I understand that Luigi Canetti Sr. drove 23 hours in that car for the 24-hour race.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that car, so again, how do you beat history like that? And I think part of the purchase price of these super high dollar cars will be that provenance that can never be matched.
Right.
I think that's the allure to spending over 50 million. Let's just use round numbers.
Well, it
So
was an honor to see the 166. It was at Cavallino Classic, what, 2 years ago?
yeah,
Yeah, right up on the front lawn there.
yeah.
Yeah, very, 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 very nice.
And imagine that car. I mean, it's tiny, and it's got this little tiny V12 in it.
Right.
It's really cool. But I can't imagine sitting behind the wheel for over 20 hours driving
No, I
that
can't
car,
imagine just getting in
and
and out of it.
just
Thankfully,
winging
it's
around corners and
right,
sliding it everywhere. I can't. Doesn't make any sense.
right. All right. What other cars from your
Well, let's
runner-up list?
stick in the Ferrari world here. The Uh, for this is a car that people think or have suggested is the most beautiful Ferrari of all time, the Ferrari P4
Hmm.
or 412P, that same generation of car. If I were to pick one, I would probably say it was the Daytona winner, which launched the name for the road car. But it was an open car, which is really kind of cool. Now these cars have already traded hands. A couple of them have sold privately, but stunningly beautiful car. Very
Right.
big round fenders. Another honorable mention I didn't put on this list, but it's always been one of my favorite cars. Again, back to the Sunoco thing and Roger Penske, but the 512M of Penske that
Mm.
crashed and really had not great history, but the car was spectacularly beautiful. But that's another car that could do stupid money basically for a Ferrari race car. Also, all the Ferraris on this list are race cars, except for the GTO. I mean, GTO is kind of in between,
Sure.
but
Yep.
for the most part, they're the racing cars, and they're the ones that will always command the most money again because based on provenance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm looking through the list here, and it's really just the GTO that was a street car, or you know, either way, and the Atlantique, right? Basically, everything else was a
Yeah,
factory race car.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really amazing. Well, I know you gave me a bunch of other stuff like by manufacturer. We could go on forever, which I think honestly warrants its own separate show. Honestly,
yeah,
um, there is one. I'm going to call it the unsaleable car
yeah.
that was not on your list. So I went. You're very familiar with this car. Um, what about the Preston Hen Ferrari?
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, because he called it $100 million car. I think realistically, it's a 40 to 50 million dollar car. Who knows? You won't know. That's why auctions are great because you find out what the actual market value is for a car at an auction.
Sometimes, yeah. Uh,
Sometimes, true.
yeah. Uh, that particular car. The reason we're on this car, we should just give the basic story.
Sure.
So it's a 275 GTBC, uh, one of
Three.
one of three in this body style, with a long nose and sort of a GTO kind of tail to it. Anyway, this is the yellow one that everybody's familiar with. They've seen this car a million times at different shows and things like that. But we were discussing, Greg and I were discussing this particular car because the owner, who has passed away, his family decided to run a two-line ad in Hemmings Motor News
One of my
in
favorite things of
February
all time.
February 2024, advertising the car. And when one of us called about the car, they told us it was worth $100 million. So I don't know about anyone else in the world. $100 million car sold on a two-line paper ad in Hemmings Motor News probably doesn't make sense to the rest of the world. Like, who first of all, who opens the magazine and goes, I got 100 million burning a hole in my pocket. What can I buy today?
Yeah.
Right?
Let
There's
me look at
there,
the Hemmings Classified.
hell. Let's look at Hemmings. I'm sure there's something good in there. Like, it was unbelievable. No picture, just a two-line
No
ad.
price, no
No
picture.
no price, no picture, but it listed the chassis number, which was like, there it is. It's the car. But it has limited. I mean, finished what, second or third at Le Mans, something
I
like
think
that.
third. Yeah, one is
Yeah,
class finished third at Le Mans. The other
right.
two,
Yeah,
Dana Meekum owns one that was just a no sale at Kissimmee
yeah,
for 27 million, and then Rob Walton has the other. He races the other one, the blue one. But it's the yellow one's the only one that has this mostly original, has original engine. And he bought it in 1970.
yeah.
So you know what? I'll do a podcast on that entire story once that entire story's finished because it's still in motion.
It is. Yeah,
Well,
it's
barely. It's chugging along like a snail.
but it is. It's a great story, and it's just
Yeah.
hilarious in a way in 2024 to see that kind of ad. Just it just struck a nerve. It was really funny. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, that
For
car didn't
sure.
make our list, by the way. So,
Yeah.
but the only other thing, and again, we mentioned a little bit earlier, the V16 Auto Union,
Yes.
which I don't know where it does. The real one still exist? I don't know. I know there's a replica out there that has been raced and taken to vintage races and things. But
There
You
were
know,
what, three of those?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one that always sticks in my mind was the hill climb car, which had dual rear tires.
Yeah. Right. I remember
So,
that. Yeah.
but that, of course, if the real one exists, I would think that would be way up there. Again, we can look at this list. There are no F1 winners on this list, but you can always think about if you're going into the best quality, the highest value F1 cars. I mean, you got to think about things like Jimmy Clark's Lotus 49, the most beautiful car of all time, the Gurney Eagle, that won the Belgian Grand Prix, and then anything Marlboro, Senna, Prost,
Right.
McLaren. I mean,
Schumacher. We
and
just had the world
Schumacher
record on
Ferrari.
the
Yeah,
Hamilton car.
Schumacher Ferrari. I mean,
I think the
I,
Hamilton sold for 18 million, which was a world record for an F1 car.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I would think that Schumi World Championship car may be higher than that. But I would definitely think an MP4, 45B, say
Right.
Senna car.
Well, you didn't mention your favorite car,
Yes,
the F1. And what about the one that won Le Mans? Where's that fit?
in the stratosphere. I would think that again, I don't think it's ever going to be sold. I think they're going to hold it forever. But it is. I mean, the F1 is the F1, and now they're trading over 25 million. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's for the street car. So get a
yeah, and
race
again,
car,
it's
put at Le Mans his, win to it. Yeah.
yeah. This particular list, I think that some of these cars that would have surpassed the 25 million mark. That's one of the reasons I chose these cars. But I think that still, there's nothing better. I think it's the best road car of all time.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and it's again, I think it's going to be when the right one comes up, like the Le Mans winner, or even the Davidoff FIA GT car, the '97 car, the long tail. I mean, that car could surpass the value of a street car. Again, it's going to depend on the buyer, the guy writing the check.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Yeah.
I mentioned this before. I mean, I like to use that term. It's rarefied air. The guy who can write a check for 10 million can't do 20. 20
Right.
can't do 30. And when you break 30, then you're in another world.
Right.
When you
Yeah.
hit 50 million, there's only a couple of people in the world that can write the check, let alone would write the check. That's what it
Right.
comes down to.
That's the hard part. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of these cars, I mean, I know in the past that some very, very expensive, over $30 million cars were actually a couple of people threw their money together to buy them. So, that's always a possibility as well. But I think any one of the top five comes up on a list somewhere for sale, expect to see astronomical over 100 million number thrown at it for sure.
Right. Right. Because it comes down. When will you be able to buy it again? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, all those cars have the one thing in their world, in their provenance, that no other car has, and that's what makes them special.
Right. Right. Yeah. Awesome.
So,
Well, are there any updates you'd like to give? Any other car stuff you're attending, doing that you can share with us?
well, we're gearing up now. We're going. There's a couple of minor events, but really, as we approach July is start prepping for Pebble very seriously because most of the cars are coming out of restoration,
Yeah.
which means I get called in at the last 2 minutes to do the dot the I's and cross the T's, so to speak. So I've got uh, probably two or three cars that are on my list that are going to Pebble Beach, and so July will be very busy. And then at the end of July, we start start thinking about going. I mean, it's a little later this year. It's in from the I'm going out I think the 12th or 13th
Right.
of
Yep.
August, but it doesn't. The show is actually that Sunday was the 17th or 18th I think. So it's going to be it's a little bit later in the year, but it's still it's still the one. I just came back from Villa d'Este, which has I will say probably a better venue, but the cars aren't as good as Pebble Beach. That's just my opinion.
Right.
Um, but you can't beat the setting. It's one of the most beautiful places on earth. If you've never been, I'd recommend going. Even if you don't go for the show, just go to Lake Como. You need to see it once.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. No, I agree. It's
but
awesome. It's
but
great.
Yeah, but Pebble Beach is still the one. It's the one that everybody wants to win. It's the one everybody wants to attend.
Right.
As far as the Concours world goes, it's the best there is.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
look forward to it every year. Sometimes it disappoints. Sometimes it doesn't. The what's amazing about it is there's a caliber of car there that's better than anything else in the world
Right.
by far.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now that they're going, the trend seems to be, as far as I've been judging there, and I'm judging again this year, but the trend is definitely going away from the over restored, dipped in plastic cars. They're going more towards as natural finishes and as delivered as possible, which is
Right.
really interesting.
Well, that's
And I think
great.
that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Make the car as it was instead of improving it with modern technology. It makes the pre-war cars look goofy because they high solids, 3 coats of high solids clear does not make a good looking pre-war car.
Right. Right.
But
Well, when we get offline, I'll tell you what car I think might win just based on what I've heard. Anyways, some
is
fun
it that
stuff.
Hummer Super Snipe again? I think that was in contention, right?
That's it. Oh my gosh, you guessed it.
Of course. Well, anyway, getting back to our list, I'm sure there's a lot of people that disagree with a lot of this crap, and want to throw their favorite car of all time in there, their '83 Z28 or whatever. But I got to say, these cars are languishing. Some of them are languishing in collections and museums right now, and may never be sold. We may never see what these numbers will actually come to fruition. But the top 10, those are probably the ones,
Yeah.
and certain chassis numbers in particular. But we don't
Right.
need to get into all the specifics. But just know that the $100 million sale, even though one has sort of been made, but it's well on its way.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
coming.
for sure. Yeah.
I remember, Greg. Just a quick side note. It's kind of a funny story. 19. This dates me a lot. 1980. I want to say 86, 85, 86. I got called to work on a car from a local broker here in Philly. He used to own a company called Old Philadelphia Motor Car Company. He always had the best cars. This guy was able to source cars from all over the world, pulled a lot of cars out of Switzerland, mostly Bugattis, big Ferraris, heavy metal at the time. So the car, he calls me up. He says, "Hey, I got this Ferrari. I need you to come look at, detail it for me." I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." So I go over there. It's a 330 LMB.
Oh wow.
330 LMB, big engine, long tail, 250 GTO. In summary, basically that's what it is. I think there are 3 cars built. Anyway, he says, so I go over there and I'm just astounded. I'm about to work on this car, and it is amazing. You look at it, it's like as close to a GTO as you can get. So I clean the whole thing up, and I'm working on it. He comes over and we're talking. And I said, "So what's the story with this car?" He says, "Well, it's leaving in a couple days." He said, "It's going to some place in Europe or whatever." And I said, "Well, that's cool." I said, "I got to ask, what's something like this worth?" He said, "Well, we sold it for $850,000."
Wow.
And I said to him, "Wait a minute. Someone's going to spend $1 million to buy a car, roughly, like
Yeah.
almost $1 million to buy a car?" He goes, "Yeah." He says, this will be like one of the first. You wait." Sure enough, a couple years later, Rick Cole auction, same guy, local Philadelphia buyer, bought the 250p and drove it around. It was on the cover of Auto Week that they paid 2.25 million for.
Yeah. Right.
And they were driving around Laguna Seca in the pits and stuff like that, because why not? What else you do with your $2 million car? But they were just driving on the street. But what's funny is, seeing those numbers back then, like who in the hell would ever pay that kind of money for a car? And now you and I are talking about $100 million for a car. It's incredible.
Well,
The
I
numbers
think
are staggering.
I think 2 years ago, when we had the RM Sotheby's had the Oscar Davis collection, along with a bunch of Ferraris. I think on my podcast it was something like $44 million cars in one auction. Now it was over 3 nights, but still, it was crazy. And the owner of the 250 GTO that sold for $52 million, he bought it in 1985 for $525,000, and that was a
Right.
world record at the time. And people laughed at him. And then he said that people thought he was genius because a year and a half later it had doubled in price.
Yeah, doubled in
So,
price. Oh my God! Imagine
yeah,
it was worth
yeah,
$1 million back then. Now it's 55 plus. I mean, let's face it. If he went to sell it again, he probably get even more.
right. Yeah, I
it's,
know, I know.
it's, but again, it's GTO. It's
Yeah,
that allure. It's that car. It's that mystique.
yeah,
Everybody wants it. Like you got to think that the top 3, 4 in our list will never be sold because they're owned by museums.
sure.
So
Yeah,
the first car that really could be a marketable would be another GTO.
right.
So
Yeah,
that will be the next huge money car, I would think. I mean,
yeah.
again, another GTO sells. See what happens, but
Unless that missing Bugatti is found, then
yeah. But good luck with that. And even if it is found, someone will absolutely spend 2 million and 20 years restoring it. So yeah, don't
yeah.
expect to see it anytime soon. And the condition of the body would be ridiculous at this point since it's made of electron, which was
No,
a
no, it wasn't.
medium.
It was only the electron burnt up, and so they
Oh,
had to the four cars that preceded it still kept the riveted spine in honor of the
yeah,
electron.
electron. Got it.
Yeah, but the missing one is the only one that has the supercharger. So, all
Yeah.
right. If you know where that car is, shoot
Call
me an
us.
email. Call
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, as always, thanks for being on the Collected Car podcast.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon, Greg. Thanks.